The 1986 Los Angeles Raiders entered Week 13 of the season sitting at a healthy 8-4, having won 8 of their last 9 games. They trail the Chiefs by 1 game in the division and are in the thickest of wildcard races. If they want a chance of sneaking into the playoffs, these last 4 games would be crucial. Their first obstacle is the 3-9 Philadelphia Eagles, who are on a 4-game losing streak. In the closing moments of the game, wide receiver Doki Williams came this close to stealing a win, but had to settle for a game-tying field goal with just seconds to play, sending the game to overtime. In a back-and-forth overtime period, the Raiders force a fumble against Randall Cunningham and recover in Eagles territory. After moving backwards, Jim Plunkett converts a 3rd and 20 to put LA in field goal range. With the Raiders now in the red zone, all that's left to do is run the ball some, get a little closer, and send their fans home happy.
Close to him, trying to catch up as Doki Williams. Williams is back there. They throw a block on him. Waters to the 10, to the 5, to the 4. Unbelievable. And trying to take it in. And no indication. Waiting, touchdown. For the touchdown. They have the touchdown, and the Eagles have won it in overtime.
Instead, a deflating loss resulted in a downward spiral that ended their season. The Raiders didn't win another game in 1986. This losing skid included a 37-0 bludgeoning in Seattle and a 3-point loss at home against Kansas City in which the Raiders turned the ball over 7 times. Going from 8-4 to 8-8 is a pretty embarrassing way for your season to end, but for what it's worth, these Raiders have company. Far too many times in a season is there a circumstance where the team starts off the regular season on a very high note, only to crumble like a graham cracker and miss the playoffs. These are the worst single-season collapses in NFL history. In 2008, the New York Jets were soul-searching. Third-year coach Eric Mangini and Gang Green were coming off a disastrous 4-12 season in which injuries and regression to quarterback Chad Pennington all but ended his time in New York. The Jets were in desperate need of a new QB to lead the team. After running Pennington out of town, they swung a trade with Green Bay for future Hall of Famer Brett Favre, who was coming out of retirement. Yeah, that's right, Brett Favre walked so Aaron Rodgers could run. Their window to contend became even more wide open when Tom Brady was lost for the season in Week 1 due to a torn ACL. The Jets took advantage, starting the season 8-3 thanks to some vintage Favre performances. Their season peaked with a resounding victory over the 10-0 Titans, which planted New York in first place in the AFC East. However, during the final 5 games of the season, Favre tore a tendon in his biceps that he inevitably tried to play through. It did not work. New York lost 3 of their next 4, including a 10-point loss in Seattle where Favre and the offense could only muster 3 points. After that, the Jets no longer controlled their own playoff destiny, but just to rub salt in the wound, Chad Pennington, now a Miami Dolphin, diced the Jets up in Week 17 to ensure they wouldn't be playing January football. Eric Mangini was fired, and Brett Favre re-retired soon thereafter. Just another instance of why the Jets can have no nice things. 3 teams in NFL history have missed the playoffs after starting 6-0. The first was the 1978 Washington Redskins, who were led by former punt returner turned quarterback Joe Theismann. After stumbling for a bit, Washington recollected themselves to sit at 8-3 before a 5-game losing skid ended their season, being eliminated in the final week of the year due to a Philadelphia win over the Giants. The 2003 Minnesota Vikings boasted one of the NFL's best offenses, led by Dante Culpepper and Randy Moss, to take a stranglehold on a weak NFC North. But despite an incredibly soft schedule down the stretch, Minnesota faltered while the second-place Packers rallied. Despite all of that, the Vikings still controlled their destiny in the final week of the season. All they had to do was beat the 3-12 Arizona Cardinals to win the division. They held a 17-6 lead with under 3 minutes left. Surely nothing will go horribly wrong, right?
McCown. Throws. Touchdown Cardinals. Brown executive producers are Ed Gorin and David Hill. The onside kick.
They got it.
And the Cardinals
kick.
Damian Anderson came down with it, a reserve running back.
Okay, well, you just sacked Josh McCown to force a 4th and 25. There's only time for one more play. Come on, guys, knock him dead.
Get back, guys. Here it is. The season's on the line. 2 receivers left and right. McCown takes the snap. He steps up. He's all by himself. Fires into the end zone. Caught! Touchdown! No! No! The Cardinals have knocked the Vikings out of the playoffs. I believe it was caught by Nate Poole. He's being mugged by his Cardinal teammates. They're Minnesota Vikings crying on the field.
Anyway, in 2008, the Denver Broncos started 8-5 and held a 3-game lead in the AFC West with 3 games left, only to squander their lead and surrender the division to the once 4-8 San Diego Chargers. 3 straight seasons of no playoffs was enough for Denver to give head coach Mike Shanahan his walking papers. Their replacement was offensive genius Josh McDaniels, with the plans of instilling a new culture upon the franchise. McDaniels got to work right away, dumping quarterback Jay Cutler and reinventing the offense in his vision. As for the team's performance in 2009, things got off to quite the start.
Next to him. Orton bumps again to the sideline. Batted up. Oh, God! Stokely down the sideline! Can they catch him? Stokely! Wow!
Goes 2 minutes to go from midfield. Brandon Marshall
go to your number 1 receiver.
Play.
Do what you do, Brandon.
Guy runs angry. 51-yard playmaker.
He's angry because he's offside.
Well, anyway, a few plays later, Matt Prater from 41 yards away. It's good. It ends the game. And the Denver Broncos win in overtime. Bill Belichick's looking for his protege to shake a hand, but his protege's going bonkers elsewhere.
He's 34.
Having fun, firing up the crowd.
Get fired up, John. I love it. Why not?
After the bye week, however, things unraveled quickly. Denver sat at 6-0 with a huge lead in the AFC West, but they lost 4 straight games and found themselves at 8-4 with 4 games left. Sound familiar? The Broncos understandably lost on the road to the then 12-0 Indianapolis Colts, but as a way to balance things out, they were immediately given as close to an extra bye week as one can conceive of, the Jamarcus Russell-led Oakland Raiders. At home, what could possibly go wrong?
Throws down the field. Incomplete and a flag. That's a good call.
I mean, he put it in there. Number 21, defense, automatic first down.
Here's Russell with time. Over the middle, caught. Beautiful job, Tony Stewart holding on. Russell looks to his left, fires, caught at the 10. He threw a BB. Here's a snap. Russell underneath, caught. Touchdown Raiders. Schillens on a crossing route.
Yes, that really happened. Your mind is not playing tricks on you. You just watched an actual NFL defense surrender a game-winning drive at home to Jamarcus Russell, who never started another NFL game ever again. Technically, Denver wasn't mathematically eliminated from the playoffs until Week 17, but come on, losing a football game to a man responsible for this, and this, and this should disqualify you from playoff football by default. So starting 6-0 and finding a way to not make the playoffs is pretty brutal to a fan, but we're not done yet. We can still dig deeper. We can still find choke jobs so grotesque that the 2004 New York Yankees would snarl in disgust at it. The 1987 NFL players' strike ate into the regular season by a game, and for 3 weeks, NFL teams were dragging out replacement players to fill the shoes of players who refused to cross the picket line. We have to continue on, but that's a rabbit hole worth diving into if you really want to. The replacements lasted for 3 games, and only 2 teams went undefeated during this span: eventual Super Bowl champion Washington and the San Diego Chargers. Following the strike's conclusion, the Big Dogs returned to San Diego and continued their winning ways, sitting at a remarkable 8-1, the best record in the NFL. Despite that, this team still had its red flags. 7 of San Diego's 8 wins were by 1 score, while playing some of the ugliest football imaginable. You thought the 2022 Vikings were walking on eggshells? Oh, little do you know, my friend. At least those Vikings didn't crumble until the playoffs started. The unraveling began with a 34-3 shellacking at the hands of the Seahawks, and the rest of the season was one spanking after another, with the exception of a close loss in Week 14 against the Steelers. That's right, the Chargers went from 8-1 to 8-7, well out of the postseason. It also meant the end of the legendary careers of franchise stalwarts Kellen Winslow and Dan Fouts. Speaking of the Steelers, in 1998, Pittsburgh was in a dogfight for an AFC playoff spot when they went to Detroit on Thanksgiving. In a defensive struggle, kicker Norm Johnson hit a field goal at the horn to send the game to overtime, where the winner of the coin toss could very well decide the game.
We'll have a toss to determine who receives. Who will call it from Pittsburgh? Number 36, heads, tails, tails, heads. Call it, plays in the air. Heads is the call. He said heads, it is a tails.
Oh, I believe he said tails.
He did.
You want to take the ball?
Look at Jerome Bettis. What's going on?
You're changing the head. Which way you want to go?
Oh, man.
Detroit has won the toss. We'll receive.
In case it wasn't obvious how this game was gonna finish.
Batch. Gonna throw down the field for more. Got it! The Lions win it 19-16.
Pittsburgh, once 7-4, completely prolapsed after this game and missed the playoffs for the first time in 7 years. But don't get too excited, Lions fans. I know you poor souls are only capable of being so excited for so long until you spontaneously combust. So let's knock them down a little bit, shall we? I know the topic of the 2008 Lions has been beaten to death at this point. Their sheer incompetence was a sight to behold for NFL fans everywhere. But there is an overlooked reason as to why their inability to rack up a single win was such a shock. Did you know that the 2007 Lions actually started their season 6-2? Yeah, with essentially the same core as the 0-16 team too. Their receiving core was rock solid, and they won 3 straight games after the bye week to jump to 6-2 on the season. Now, don't get me wrong, this team was never exactly anything special outside of rookie Calvin Johnson. They had the worst defense in the league, John Kitna was the epitome of mid at the quarterback position, and the Lions couldn't really run the ball. Detroit lost 6 in a row and ended their season with a whimper. From Week 7 of the 2007 season to the end of the 2009 season, the Detroit Lions won 3 games and lost 37. In Week 5 of the 1994 season, the Philadelphia Eagles walked into Candlestick Park and beat the ever-loving shit out of the defending Super Bowl champion 49ers. Randall Cunningham scorched the vaunted San Francisco defense, Charlie Garner racked up over 100 rushing yards, and the defense, who had recently lost franchise icon Reggie White to free agency, made Hall of Famer Steve Young look like a glorified Seneca Wallace. That and 3 straight wins midway through the season had Philly flying high at 7-2. It was at this point that head coach Rich Kotite was looking for an extension on his contract, which expired after the 95 season. Owner Jeffrey Lurie wanted to wait until season's end to have that conversation, but Kotite made it clear he was looking for a new contract right away. I believe my record speaks for itself, Kotite would say. Yeah, you're damn right it does. Just in case it wasn't blatantly obvious that Kotite has set himself up to look like a total dumbass, I'll just tell you now, the Eagles did not win another game in 1994. The coup de grace was a Week 16 game against the Giants, where Kotite benched the struggling Cunningham in favor of backup Bubby Brister. In a tie game, Philadelphia's Jeff Snyder fumbles a kickoff by running into his own teammate, which resulted in a Giants field goal and ensuing win, eliminating the Eagles from the playoffs. Oh, and on Christmas Eve, they blew a 27-10 lead to a 2-13 Bengals squad. Woof. Predictably, Kotite was fired soon thereafter their final game. He then went to the Jets, where in 2 seasons, he compiled a record of 4-28. You're right, Rich. Your record really does speak for itself. We have one more collapse to go over in this video, which is easily the most vicious in NFL history, at least in my opinion. One can make the case for the 87 Chargers or the 94 Eagles for being the worst, but if you ask me, this one tops them all. In 1993, the Miami Dolphins were looking to punch their ticket to the postseason for the 3rd time in 4 years. In 92, Marino & Co. led Miami to the AFC Championship, in which they were punked by their division rivals to the north. Although their defense is quite stinky by 1993 standards, Marino's excellence, Don Shula's stability, and new Pro Bowl receiver Irving Fryer snagged from New England has them in good hands. They're sitting at 3-1 heading into a Week 6 matchup with the Cleveland Browns, where disaster strikes.
Down on one knee. Marino is hurt on the play. Najee Mustafa made the tackle on Kirby upfield. I didn't see the hit, did you, Jim? I did not see the hit, Rick.
Miami may have won the game, but due to an Achilles injury, they just lost their legendary quarterback for the season. At this point, sliding and missing the postseason would be acceptable, right? Well, it's not that simple. Enter backup quarterback Scott Mitchell. Mitchell was steadfast and got the win in Marino's place entering their second bye week. Over the next 4 games, Mitchell was rock solid and Miami continued to win. However, in the midst of a Week 11 win in Philly, which got Don Shula his record-setting 325th coaching win, Mitchell also got injured. The Dolphins QB heading into their next game against New England was 39-year-old Steve DeBerg, which Miami also won. Shit, could this team do anything wrong? Thanksgiving Day, Week 13. The 8-2 Dolphins, still quarterbacked by the fossilized DeBerg, enter Texas Stadium to take the defending Super Bowl champions in the 7-3 Cowboys. In a defensive struggle, Miami's offense took the field down a point with 2:16 left, where DeBerg drove the Dolphins downfield in position to hit the game-winning field goal with just seconds to play. The Dolphins, who have cheated death all year, are looking to do it yet again.
Doug Peterson to hold. Block. The Cowboys will win.
Wait a minute.
Wales in the end zone. No one covered it, and Miami did. That could be a touchdown if Miami has covered it.
A Dallas player touched the ball, and then the Dolphins went on and recovered it.
It's on the 1-yard line. It's not in the end zone. It's in the 1-yard line.
Ball here. Watch what happens. It's Leon left. No!
Look at the difference in where you wind up in the playoffs. 19 yards. He makes it. Miami goes home with a miracle win. The Dolphins pull it out. 16-14. Game over.
For those of you whose bell was rung by the name Leon Lett, he was also the guy who did this in the Super Bowl.
Can he go all the way? It's a 60-yard run. He's being chased by BB. What's out? Did he get across? No, they are not. That's going to be a touchback to Buffalo.
With a win in similar fashion to that of junior varsity ball, the Dolphins jumped to an NFL best 9-2 with 5 games left. These guys looked like a team of destiny. They were winning games no matter the circumstance and had the best record in the NFL, despite being down to their 3rd-string quarterback. But just when it seemed like the stars had aligned for Miami to go all the way, everything fell apart.
Here's the onside kick. You think they're going left? I think so. And Schumann with the ball. Not this time for Shula, winning in the final minute.
Have one more chance. 15 to go. DeBerg throws, and he advertised where it was going. Rod Woodson picks it off. Dolphins failed to score over 20 points for the 6th consecutive game. Shula, Cowher shake hands.
On the plus side, Scott Mitchell was ready to come back for a grudge match against the Bills. That's where the good news stops.
Mitchell with a duck, and it's intercepted by Matt Darby. Darby at the 40. Darby at the 30. He's still on the loose.
With another loss in San Diego, the now 9-6 Dolphins found themselves on the precipice of missing the playoffs heading into their final game of the season. Despite losing 4 straight, Miami still controlled their own playoff destiny. A win against the 4-11 Patriots would put them in. With under 90 seconds to go, Drew Bledsoe's Patriots worked their way into the red zone down by 4.
Right on the numbers. Now Bledsoe throws to the end zone. It's caught for a touchdown.
Just like that, Scott Mitchell and the offense have to go back out there and get at least a field goal, or the season is over.
He's going to come right down to the final gun. Is on 2nd and 10. Mitchell stands in, fires to the near sideline. He's got a man. Mark Ingram, who dances the sideline, gets the first down yarder. 2nd down and 10. Mitchell steps in, makes the throw, makes the completion. O.J. McDuffie. First down, Miami. Mitchell in the shotgun. All-out blitz. Mitchell throws. He's got a man. Ingram fighting.
And finally, he steps out of bounds in the closing stretch. Mitchell steps in, gets it away. Man is there, and he catches the ball and gets out of bounds. Dolphins have one timeout left. Mitchell looks, starts to run it. He throws it. It's caught. They rule he's out of bounds. Ingram had it. He says he was pushed while he was in the air.
Sorry, Mark. Instant replay isn't a thing yet. Although it seems that Ingram did get his feet in bounds that should have given Miami a win, they have to settle for 3. Overtime it is then. Both teams exchanged possessions until Drew Bledsoe gave the Patriots, who were on the verge of relocation to St. Louis, gave their fans something, for all they know, the last thing to celebrate about.
He was cut, and he's been perfect as a Patriot. Bledsoe, long ball, man is open, Timpson, touchdown, it's over.
With that, the 1993 Miami Dolphins became the first and only team in NFL history to miss the playoffs after a 9-2 start. Some of you may absolve this collapse due to Marino's injury, and you might be right, but Scott Mitchell did have some really solid performances in Marino's stead. Even though they were down to their third stringer, they were still winning games with him. They couldn't get one game in 5 tries with Don Shula, the winningest head coach in NFL history. Inexcusable if you ask me. So what do you think? What do you think is the worst single-season collapse in NFL history? Are you with me on it being the 93 Dolphins, or do you have something else in mind? If you take anything from this video, let it be this. Until that X or Y is next to your team in the standings, you cannot assure anything. Trust me, I, as a Ravens fan, know this all too well.